explain it to your children, should you want any, why you're naked all over the internet. You set them up for failure, mental problems, etc.
You guys want to respond to that real quick?
You can go first.
Okay. I've never wanted kids. I thought really hard when I started doing sex work online about what that would do to my digital footprint and things like that. I know a lot of people, who do have kids, and there's, age appropriate ways to explain it to your kids. Like, you wouldn't tell a toddler oh yeah, mommy takes dick money, no. But yeah, it's just a job, and I think it could be beneficial potentially, as the, to grow up and learn about sex work as work and what safe sex practices are, and also to learn hey, your digital footprint never goes away.
Assuming for a second that you did have little Stephanie, would you, and little Stephanie came to you at 17 and said that she had aspirations to follow in your footsteps and do for a living because of how much money she saw mommy make from that, would you be encouraging of that, or would you discourage it?
I would encourage her, especially at 17, to think long and hard about that, because I was realistic when I got into it that there's that digital footprint, man. It never goes away. It does affect your future opportunities, and don't get into it for
okay. So she's thought
money.
About it, right? She went and had a good think. Now she's 19 years old. She thought about it for 2 years. She said, "Mom, look, I just absolutely have to go out and take that D for money because it makes so much of it." What do you say to Stephanie? You going to support Stephanie and all of her? Would you give her your contact cards? Do you think your old contact cards?
That might feel a little
I mean, honestly, I'm honestly curious about this.
If she really seriously wants to do this and understands once you're in it, and it's not smart to do it for I'll do it for a couple years when I'm young and then I'll leave. That's not realistic, and she knows that it's going to follow her around forever, and it's something that if she wants to do, she should really commit to. Then yeah, absolutely, go for it.
And
I would be such a hypocrite to say not to do it because I did it.
You wouldn't be a hypocrite. It wouldn't be a hypocrisy to tell her not to do it. You engage in an activity. So if for instance, if my 6-year-old son came to me and was like, "Hey Dad, give me one of those Marlboros," and I said no, would I be a hypocrite?
No, that's a 6-year-old.
Well, but
that's not a 19-year-old who's making a decision about their career.
If my 20-year-old came over to me, let's say, and said, "Hey, let me have one of those smokes," and I said, "No, it's bad for you," does that make me a hypocrite in your worldview?
It doesn't make you a hypocrite, but I wouldn't say for you the way that cigarettes are bad for you. Now I smoke cigarettes too, but one will give you cancer. It has all these health detriments that have been long recorded, and
yeah, but that's not my question. My question isn't whether or not cigarette smoking is bad for you in comparison to. My question is, are you saying that it would make a person a hypocrite if they smoked and told other people that smoking was bad for them? How would that be hypocrisy?
Okay, I don't think that was your original question though. Your original question was, would I encourage if I had a daughter to get into porn? I don't think porn. Well, I don't think drawing the comparison to cigarettes.
Hang on. Before we go off into a bunch of prattle, let's go back.
Into what?
Okay. And before we go into a bunch of prattle, let's move back. Okay. So how this conversation went was, you said no, I couldn't say that to her because I'd be a hypocrite. And so I said, well, wait a second. If that's true, then that's like saying that I'd be a hypocrite if I told someone, hey, smoking cigarettes is bad for your health, and I'm not going to give you one, even though I smoke. Are you saying that's hypocrisy? Because that doesn't make any sense to me.
Porn's not bad for your health, though. And as an of-age consenting adult, I couldn't. I'm sorry, what?
What are the HPV rates for hormone? Do you know?
What are the rates?
And the increased rates,
know.
The increased rates of cervical cancer for women. The increased rates of STDs, which are inside the industry, very much inside the industry. We can pretend that that's not true, but yeah, it is true. How can you say that it's not an increased risk, even for violence and for SA?
There are many jobs that have certain risks, and that's what I said. You think about it. It's not a decision you take lightly, but if this is what, if I had a daughter and she really thought about it and was being had a good head on her shoulders about it, then yeah, of course, She should absolutely do it. Who am I to stop
So
her?
then it stands to reason then that we could assume that other people's daughters, let's say from a single father or something like this, who talked with you, came to you and asked for advice on this, that you would be encouraging to them as well.
Well, there's a reason I don't give advice to people. I'm not like a
But, I
role
mean, it
model
stands to reason
necessarily.
that if you
Like
give
I'm
that
not
advice to
in
your
a
own
position to
daughter-
be a role model. I don't speak to anybody underage about what I do ever. I never.
No, I
ever would bring
understand.
that
I
up.
understand that, but it stands to reason, though, that if you would give that advice to your own daughter, wouldn't you give it to other people's daughters as well?
I mean, everybody is somebody's daughter. So if I was talking to a young woman and she was asking me questions about the, I would answer, but I don't go around encouraging people to do work. I think it's a personal decision, and I think it's something
You just
that
said
you
that you
shouldn't
would
take lightly.
encourage your daughter and to help her in any way possible if she wanted to. You
No.
wouldn't discourage her at all.
I would support my daughter's dreams no matter what they were. That's what I said. I wouldn't go out of my way to be like, oh, like, you should do a ton of money. That's not how I would go about it. But if she came
Well,
to
I mean,
me,
you wouldn't think, you don't think it's good parenting to support your kids in all their endeavors, right? I mean, that seems counterproductive to parenting,
yeah,
doesn't
but
it?
this isn't an endeavor that would be bad to be supportive of. I think it would be more dangerous to, cut somebody off and be like, well, if you do that, I'm not speaking to you. And then she runs off
Well,
and
then
does
what
it
does-
anyway.
what
and
does
she has
enabling
nobody to
mean
speak
then?
to.
What is enabling? Isn't enabling when you enable a bad behavior because you refuse to lay down a consequence for it?
It's not a bad behavior.
Not a bad behavior?
No.
It's an occupation.
Mhm.
And people can disagree with it. And I would think if it was my kid, I would explain the pros and cons. This affected my life in a positive way. This affected it in a negative way. And you can learn from my experiences. You can't really control someone when they're of age and they want to make their own decisions.
Well, let's just look at it from a pragmatic perspective. You would agree with me that most people who enter into don't make very much money, right?
I think the statistics are widely skewed by people who come in for like a scene or two, or they do something for like a month or two. They don't really commit to it. And yeah, those people, they do not make a lot of money. And
Yeah, so
then they
then
have a
most
bad
people
digital
who
footprint.
engage in don't make a lot of money, right?
But that's what I'm saying is that statistic is skewed by people who come in, they shoot one or two scenes, they're not committed to it, they haven't thought about it
most people
beforehand.
who engage in don't make a lot of money, is that correct?
It's the entertainment industry. Not everybody is successful, but the people who commit to it, there is a lot of money in this industry.
Yeah, so again, to my question, I'll ask it a fourth time. So then most people who engage in don't make a lot of money, correct?
It's only the really successful people that work hard at it that end up making the money.
I think that's I think that's true of like many professions. What
Guys,
exactly
guys,
are you
hold
getting
on.
out of this?
Hold on. I need to table this conversation. We can get back to the conversation later on in the show. I need